Hello friends, welcome to the first episode of ÜberJamz. My name is CJ, and this is a little show I created to invite you to go on an adventure with me into all things music, to discuss what we hear on the radio and streaming services, and talk to the people responsible for the content and its journey to our ears. This week we'll be talking about music for film, a little about its history and why it's so important, and how a soundtrack can make or break a movie. Also this week I'll be talking to a great musician, composer, and a dear friend of mine, Dominik Told, about his role within the music industry and trying to make a living with music in the modern world of movie making. So stick around and I hope you can learn some cool stuff with me. Also, remember, if you like this podcast, please subscribe to receive notifications when new episodes are published, and extra credit to those who leave a comment. Let's jam on some stuff. So, what's the score? Today I'm going to explore soundtracks, compositions, and interesting facts about music for film. Now, I do not claim to be an aficionado on this subject, but the purpose of this podcast is to put myself out of my comfort zone, learn as I go, and hear stories from people who really are the subject matter experts. It's a lot like jamming with other musicians. You have no idea which way it's going to go, but you know you're playing music. So let's jam on film scores for a bit. Music is often able to stir emotions, create significant memories that hold a place in time, and be the soundtracks of our lives. But frequently, in music for film, the soundtracks are there to simply embellish what's being portrayed on screen. Now, I come from a contemporary popular music background where things like lyrical content are everything. So how do these composers say what they want to say when it's connected to the moving picture? Is it different, or are there similarities? The history of film scores can be traced back to a time of noisy projectors, distracted audiences, and quick-thinking theatre owners. Kurt London said in Daniel Albright's book, Modernism and Music, that film scores began not as a result of any artistic urge, but from a dire need of something which would drown the noise made by the projector. Simple as that. A creative way to overcome the technology of its time. He goes on to say, for in those times, there was as yet no sound-absorbent walls between the projection machine and the auditorium. This painful noise disturbed visual enjoyment to no small extent. Instinctively, cinema proprietors had recourse to music, and it was the right way, using an agreeable sound to neutralize one less agreeable. Early works by the Lumiere brothers often were accompanied by a pianist playing off simple cues, and sometimes full orchestras would be playing full-length scores to moving picture. An example of the latter is Fritz Lang's Metrópolis. If you've never seen that movie, I think it's all on YouTube for free. You can check it out. Also, there was a really good early episode from All Geeks Considered podcast. They do a whole bit about that movie and it's not only its significance in cinematography, but also how it changed a lot of things moving forward for motion picture. Now, this was happening in the early 20th century, which seems crazy, thinking that this returned in the 2010s when the Royal Albert Hall began playing movies with the film score soundtrack removed and replaced with live Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. I guess some circles just take longer to close. Now, fast forward to the revolution that was the talkies and the Warner Brothers, all four of them in fact. I had no idea that there were four Warner Brothers, but every day is a school day. Composers again had to push the boundaries and limitations of what synchronized sound would mean for them, moving from creating the only audible content in a whole motion picture to now seeing the future of things to come and embracing that change. Change didn't happen overnight. In fact, talking pictures were laughed off as a fad in their infancy, but so are most great ideas, historically speaking. An increase in musical direction began to emerge, and totally new approaches to aleatoric music began. Aleatoric music, for those unaware, is where elements of the music are left up to chance. For example, the tempo or the timbre might change dependent on what's happening on the screen, but for the most part, simple motifs or cues are in place to read from when it comes time to perform. Skip ahead a few more years and things got creative again, and much more up my alley of knowledge and expertise, with using contemporary music as a basis for film scores. In Elia Kazan's movies like A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront, both which were phenomenal early Marlon Brando movies, and Otto Preminger's Anatomy of a Murder, jazz ensembles and orchestrations began to be used. A Streetcar Named Desire was set in New Orleans, which makes total sense to use jazz orchestration since, it's in New Orleans. And Anatomy of a Murder was scored by none other than Duke Ellington. Now, for those of you unaware of who Duke Ellington is, I question which rock you've been living under for the last 100 years, but please jump into his music. He's one of the great artists of all time. Later on, composers like Ennio Morricone, who we'll also talk about with Dominik later on, would also take modern approaches and contemporary instrumentation into cinema with his use of electric instruments and signature sound effects. This was born out of a lack of budget to get a full orchestra. Ennio Morricone is another name you should absolutely remember from today. His work inspired so many other composers and artists even till this day. If you've ever listened to any Quentin Tarantino movie, you'll instantly recognize who made the music. Now, a lot has changed since then, but the original premise remains the same. Make the music come to life. After the golden age of classical Hollywood cinema, new Hollywood cinema had new movie genres and new breeds of directors pushing the boundaries of what was possible with music in film. We began to see genuine standalone motion picture soundtracks appear frequently with movies like Bonnie and Clyde, Easy Rider, The Exorcist, Jaws, The Godfather, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and of course, Star Wars. Instantly recognizable soundtracks, not only from their main themes, but alternate parts of the movie galvanized by the perfect execution of a great film score. These directors knew something that the public did not yet know they needed. The rise of the blockbuster movies and franchises were generating huge capital for studios, and with that kind of money floating around and the expectancy of huge Hollywood hits, they needed a score to match. Terminator 2 and The Lion King come to mind. Speaking of The Lion King, Hans Zimmer is a name, if you don't know already, is certainly one you need to know about film scoring and composition. He's like the John Lennon of film scores, an incredible writer and composer, but also a rock star for his contributions to the craft in the public eye. Pirates of the Caribbean, Interstellar, Inception, the Dark Knight trilogy, the list goes on and on and on, and immediately recognizable and phenomenal body of work. I won't go into specifics or detail about what they call needle drop music, which is where a pre-written pop song is added strategically into the movie, in the style of Quentin Tarantino, or movies like Baby Driver or Guardians of the Galaxy. There's an amazing YouTube video by StudioBinder about this and its effectiveness, which I will link in the description of this podcast. It will teach you everything you need to know. So now, let's have my chat with Dominik Told and talk about who he is, how he got started, and where he's going in the future. I'll also leave a full description and link to his work and social media, so you can check him out in your own time. So without further ado, here's my jam with Dominik Told. P.S. There was some weird audio things happening when I initially started recording the interview with Dominik. So it sounds like I punch him in the face with my first question. It didn't happen like that, I swear. But we're going to work with it. So enjoy. Who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you? Where are you from?
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm Dominik.
Hi, Dom.
That's my name.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Dom. Yeah. No, I'm Dominik. I'm from this weird place on Earth, which is in between Italy and Austria. And we belong to Italy, but we do speak German as well.
So it's
a bit weird.
Yeah, because this how I remember meeting you was when we were at tech school. So we were at music college together, and your English wasn't so good at that point.
Nope.
But like
not.
like obviously you spoke fluent German and fluent Italian, but like your English was like super minimal.
Yeah.
But then obviously that you figured that part out over time. So you speak 3 fluent languages, yes?
Yes, yeah, I do. Yeah. So my main language or mother tongue would be German, and then Italian and English as well.
Crazy stuff. So
Yeah.
the polyglot from northern Italy slash Austria slash yeah. Because your town like borders like literally is on the border of Italy and Austria, correct?
Yeah, I mean we're about an hour away by car,
Right.
but we're pretty much close. Like, I mean, you can't get that much closer. You can live on the border as well,
Right.
but yeah, it's not that nice.
Crazy. Yeah. No. So yeah. So obviously, like I just said, we met when we lived in London. We moved there the same year, and we were at school together, and we got into all kinds of hijinks with different music and jammed out on tons of different stuff. And I think that's how we got to know each other was through like jamming in like rehearsal rooms and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember the days where when we could book any room we wanted and just go for it for hours and end until someone kicked us out.
Yeah.
Pretty much until midnight.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah.
school
You could
closed
rehearse
at
like
midnight.
super late. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you know what's really funny? I think like after because you went on to help teach and do courses there as well after like long after we left. But the school moved, so like the it feels like we were kind of like the final class before that really shut down. Um, in where it was in London, then moved to Fulham, and then you carried on doing additional work for them. So what was that like?
Oh, that was really cool. Yeah, so we were definitely the last class to come out of there because at the end of 2013, when we graduated, we the school moved over, and yeah, they got a completely new building, and everything was brand new and really shiny, and we basically kind of got molded in this let's say shithole. I mean,
It's
it
so
had a
true though.
vibe.
It's so true.
It had a vibe. It had
Yeah,
a
because
vibe.
yeah, but the it's inescapable fact of that we were the last of that group meant that there wasn't much money being pumped into the quality of the classrooms. I'll put it that way.
Oh no, no! Everything got pumped into the new building
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
So they got this brand new, shiny, remodeled building, and yeah, I carried on working for them as like doing some small work on the side, mostly session stuff. And then one day I got the call to start teaching there, and yeah, that brought me along to do teaching, like group teaching, one-on-one, all sorts of stuff. Going from my main instrument is bass,
Yeah.
still is, and but I also I always liked software and computers and recording and all that stuff. So they hired me pretty much for that as well.
Right. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get onto the music production side in a little bit
yeah, man.
when we go into some of the hardcore nerdy nitty gritty shit. So
Yeah.
yeah, so let's take it back. Let's take it back to sort of your formative like early years. How long have you been making music?
So I pretty much started playing guitar. So this is classical guitar,
Okay.
like very classical. We're talking, put the guitar on your left leg, and you have to support your left leg up and all that sort of stuff. With
Hmm.
this little bench thing and whatever. And yeah, no, I started at the age of 8, and pretty much got forced by my mum. So
As it usually goes, you know.
yeah, 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 exactly.
They
Pretty
like
much.
spend all the money trying to figure out what it is you're gonna do in life, and then you stick with one and hope for the best.
Well, it was pretty much she figured out what my sister should do, and then my sister didn't want to do it anymore after a year.
Uh-huh.
And so we had this guitar lying around after a year, and she just said, "Okay, well,
So you got a
now
hand
play
you got a
guitar."
hand me down.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
That's interesting.
It was pretty much, look, this is lying around in the house, and you better start playing it.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's pretty funny.
you took that and you pretty much ran with it. But then the problem was is that you ran into shall we say contemporary music that involves long hair and headbanging, no?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think there is pretty much maybe like 3 routes you can go in your life.
Yeah.
when you're younger. So either there's like kind of hip hop R&B genre thing that you're like part of,
Mm-hmm.
um, or there is more like sort of like the music what your parents listen to, so like Motown or soul or blues or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or there is kind of like the rock stuff,
Yeah.
and I was basically part of the latter.
You were
Yeah,
persuaded. You were persuaded by the metal. Okay, fair enough. Fair
yeah,
enough.
pretty much so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Now the obviously, like I mean, we already mentioned that you and I met when we both moved to London same year, obviously to study the same courses, same degrees and everything. And now ours was what was popular music performance. It was like contemporary music. So my big question is for this one, where we start to talk about music for film and film scoring and things like that. How did that come about? How did you kind of pivot, or how did you kind of integrate that into what you do?
Oh, okay, yeah. So, well, it all kind of started off on a matter of actually just sitting at home and thinking. I think I watched a movie at one point, and I was like, "Oh wow, there's like the music is just great." So I started thinking, this friend from back home is kind of he came to my mind, and yeah, I remember that he made short films
Okay.
as a hobby. So he works for like, what was it, like Siemens or something like that, and then as in like the company,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
the German company
yeah.
Siemens, kind of like massive company. He's like an engineer,
Right,
and I think he now works for like the aeroplane department of something else. I don't know, like super clever guy.
right. He's moving up in the world.
And but yeah. But he loves making movies, and that's kind of like his hobby, right?
Right.
So this guy came to my mind, and I was like, I wonder if he ever needed music. So I got in touch with him. Look, do you ever need any music for your films, or just soundscapes, or just sounds in general? And he actually, funnily enough, he got back to me pretty quickly and said, "Oh, listen, mate. Actually, really funny that you got in touch with me now, because one of my short films just got kicked off YouTube because of copyright reasons. I used some music that I wasn't allowed to use, and it got kicked off and whatever. Could you just write something for this one scene?"
Okay.
So I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah, send it over. I'll give it a look and I see what I can do." So he sent me the whole thing over. It's about 25 minutes long, 30 minutes long, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Standard short film. I look at it and I think to myself, like, this music doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
Like, we're literally working our way through like EDM to some like classical stuff to like whatever, but like radical moves.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't make sense. So I write back to him like, "Look, mate, would you mind if I have a go at the whole thing?
Okay.
Maybe if you like it, you can keep it. If you just like that one scene that you can just keep that."
Okay.
And he was like, "Yeah, sure, do whatever you want. Like, it would be great." So I go about the first time ever doing this, and it turned out great. Yeah, he loved it, and he put the film back up on YouTube and all the platforms and Vimeo and whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it started.
It managed. So the music that he had that was in there obviously was a copyright infringement. YouTube took it down immediately, probably.
Yeah.
Were they just kind of like was that like his temp score? Or was that like he wanted something in that style, or did you kind of look at that and where you said like it doesn't make sense? Did you just say take the whole thing out and let me just take a crack at it, or did you kind of still try and keep it to what was intended in those spaces?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of weird because it's not really a temp score anymore because it was already released.
Right.
So it's kind of like he very much intended to release the film with this music on. So I kind of took a stab really at kind of like trying to superimpose myself
Okay.
on this movie,
Sure,
which is kind of funny. Like, but I was like, look, he basically just like put in different music that he found online from different people. So it was already like published music, So
Okay.
it wasn't anything bespoke.
Right. Okay.
So I kind of took like I saw some things, like some scenes and stuff and some pictures, and I thought, oh, this might be great like this, and maybe this feeling and stuff like that. And we spoke on the phone a few times, and what he kind of like wanted as well, and yeah, we went from there.
That's fascinating, because that's when you think about when people there's a phrase where people say about luck, where preparation meets opportunity, right? And obviously that was, you spent your whole life preparing how to make music, like something that you've done. I mean, that I've known you from from all those years ago, was somebody who was super involved in you know audio engineering and things like that, like knowing how to deal with DAWs and how to record and stuff like that. You were always kind of like my go-to guy for that, to help me understand more about it. But you've got all that down, and then all of a sudden he says, yeah, it's funny you should say that. And it was just one of those kind of serendipitous moments where that kind of all came together. That's fascinating to know.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think that's how most things go, right? I think if you are what's the word I'm looking for, audacious enough to reach out, yes, you already know the guy, but to reach out cold and say, hey, do you need help? Or hey, can I help? Or can I do something for this? You never really know what's going to happen. Which I find,
exactly.
I find fascinating.
I'm a big believer in luck itself, right? But
Yeah.
you gotta, luck doesn't come from nothing. You got to make it yourself, kind of. You got to make those opportunities happen.
Yeah. And especially in the the wider music industry, where you have to, you've got to be bold, you've got to be brave, because at the end of the day, most of us, unless you're employed by some big company, you're a self-employed on the spot musician. Like you've got to figure out how you're going to do it with what you love and how you're going to make money from that, right? So that's awesome. I didn't know that story, actually. So the thinking about, like, now that you've got some actual bodies of work, like you actually have genuine motion picture soundtrack compositions now, like you have a catalog now, right?
I would say I'm still in my starting position, let's put it that way.
Right.
I still can't really 100% live of just writing music for like picture, but that's very much the goal that I'm striving to. That's what I want to reach in,
right,
kind of like, in the upcoming years.
Right, because for anyone who's going to listen to this, if you go into the usual places like Spotify and streaming services, you can find music that you've done. You can find music that you've created and put towards film and things like that. You can find at least the audio of that, right? Are the finished products, like the included with the film, are they on like YouTube or Vimeo or places like that, or are they still very very much with the director themselves?
Some of them are. A lot of them, they're still so new that they want to kind of keep hold of the releases until they've kind of sent them off to loads of like festivals and all that sort of stuff.
Right. So
because I only started going down that route about like 2 to 3 years ago, so it's still very fresh, and some of these movies that I've done until now are such budget movies.
Yeah.
That you have to understand that it takes like about 3 times the amount of time for a normal film to come out.
Right. Yeah. So I think to anyone who is listening, who is was thinking about doing this, that's something they need to keep in mind.
It's a time investment as well. You're not going to make money straight away. Like that's barely the success story that you hear.
Yeah.
With all of the people that are out there right now, most of them are in their 40s, if not older.
Sure.
Yeah. Who are making money and can live of this.
Yeah. So there's a future Hans Zimmer in you yet, right?
Well, well, you can strive for it. Yeah, you can always try. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, actually, who are some when it comes to that specifically, like the film scoring and writing music for movies and perhaps TV, maybe in the future, like who are some of your influences?
Ooh, well, now we're talking. That's a big question. Like this is massive, you know. Like
Yeah,
because the list
let's go
can
down the
go
rabbit
on,
hole. Let's
right?
jam on that. What are like who are some of your key influences? Okay, it's at this point I have to stop the interview to explain something. Dom and I managed to keep this relatively short and sweet about his influences and the people who've inspired him to do the work that he does. However, he would have quite easily gone on for the rest of the day talking about these people. So I have gotten a list from him. I'm going to put it in the description of this podcast so you can check out all those people individually to give you some kind of indication as to what Dominik Told's music actually sounds like and what his style of composition also sounds like as well. All right, back to the episode.
Whoa, wow. Okay, I would say like I do love the big orchestral sound and all that sort of stuff, but I do, coming from that whole contemporary music scene and everything, I really like composers who do integrate that as well.
Okay.
So one of my big influences that I really like, and I specifically like it actually for his influences in the like 90s and early 2000s. In like big action hits is Trevor Rabin.
Okay.
It's really funny. Maybe someone you haven't heard of, but he's the guy who did like Con Air and Armageddon and all that sort of stuff.
Interesting. So like you're talking like the blockbuster action movie hits of the 90s, right?
From the 90s and early 2000s. He's like one of the guys. And what I really dig about him is how he integrated again, one of the big facets of composing music for film is you can kind of like throw anything at the wall and see whatever combination sticks.
Right.
And he kind of managed to do that a lot with like guitars and drums and all that sort of stuff.
Okay. Especially
like big, massive guitars. So you will hear like rather than having like Zimmer style massive horn and like themes for big brass. He will have the same thing for like a massive guitar or like wall of sound kind of thing. It's really fascinating.
Nice. So and because I was thinking about that, and I think when I was doing a little bit of research and prep for this, because I mean, you know me, like when it comes to you know, soundtracks or music for film or orchestral arrangements, I'm so out of my depth with this, and this was kind of the purpose of this is to speak to people who know far more about this than I do. So when I went down that rabbit hole, there was a name that I recall like that you put me onto years ago that I had no idea about who he was, but then when you realize, you know, everybody knows who this guy is, I felt like I was just living under a rock. Was a fellow Italian of yours, which is Ennio Morricone. Like, I had no idea who he was, but I feel like he falls into that category as well, because he introduced, you know, contemporary instruments into, you know, into film scoring because he didn't have a budget. Like the studios that he was working with didn't have a budget to get like an entire, you know, orchestral, you know, arrangement or even just hire the musicians themselves. So he started bringing in like, you know, guitar players and like standard drummers and things like that. Cause for those who don't know, he did a lot of composition for some like early, I'd say like in the 60s, like Italian comedies.
Pretty much all the spaghetti westerns and all that sort of stuff later on.
All the spaghetti
like
westerns,
his big works are like later on, right? But yeah, in the 60s he did like comedy stuff and
those
stuff,
like they were like slapstick Italian, like really cheesy comedies. But then obviously people know him for, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, and Fistful of Dollars and all of that, those spaghetti western hits. Like, I had no idea, let alone about the movies, but about the music itself. But him as a character, who not only by doing those movies and putting that music out into the world, the amount of people who he influenced going forward.
Massive.
Yeah, I mean he scored a bunch of stuff for Tarantino when he wasn't putting in, like needle drop music, or he wasn't like putting in stuff like that.
The only guy who ever to score for Tarantino.
Yeah, like I had no idea when I looked into that, and it all of a sudden it broke that. I think it broke that bridge for me to understand where contemporary music is and where classical orchestral arrangements are, and then and finding that middle ground. Like he's an epic starting point, and he's a fellow Italian of yours, so there you go.
Yeah, he's massive, but he's also he's one of the greats, the great masters. You can easily put him alongside too, like John Williams and all those guys that everyone knows.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Morricone is just massive, huge. Like his influence, like not just in terms of orchestration or that sort of stuff, but also how he influenced the film industry later on. People started looking differently at soundtracks.
Right.
It's crazy. Like he's definitely one of the biggest milestones for writing, for music writing, for film.
Yeah, I think you can listen to a ton of music from that era, and you can hear like surf music in his like arrangements. It's kind of crazy where you can hear these like blatantly obvious contemporary popular music influences in his music. So that was the thing that blew my mind, that it came from him to then influence back the other way. Like if you listen to like a ton of Muse tracks where you hear that like surf style guitar, big like anthemic arrangements and things like that, they Matt Bellamy basically out and out said, yeah, Morricone was one of my key influences. It blew my mind. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Who is this guy? So that's why I kind of did some deep diving into figuring out who he was, and I learned a whole lot. But speaking of those, I think I mentioned a couple there, but like some standout soundtracks. What were some real big standout soundtracks to you that you've kind of drawn influence from, or even like plagiarized to a certain extent? And obviously, I don't want to put your foot in it and say that you stole it, but like, what are some standout soundtracks that have really inspired you?
I mean, more on the like kind of like recent spectrum of things. I would definitely say people like Dario Marinelli on like Everest, the film was huge. Daniel Pemberton, this English guy, super quirky dude. Like if you ever get a chance, look him up online. He's his studio looks like a garage pretty much, but it's like it's a massive garage of just accumulated things. And until recently, I think he still was working on like super old computers and all that sort of stuff. He's one of the rare minds that are still working on like, oh, how can I put this, I don't know, like very weird instrument from like this market thing where I found this on the floor on this movie, and he does it. He makes it work.
Yeah, just one of those, the thinking like truly outside the box type individuals.
Oh yeah, massive, yeah. But one of the big ones was definitely Bridge of Spies, with Tom Hanks
right
as the lead character, and Thomas Newman wrote the score for that, and it's just great. I mean, Thomas Newman himself is just fantastic, anyways. But he was, in particular, that score was great. Like,
yeah, I would definitely. Like I said, the amount of things that you just listed at me that I've never even heard of. So I'm that's what this the whole point of this was, to speak to people like you who know tons about it and learn something as I go. So I'm gonna move on to, I guess, what I'd like to call the nitty gritty nerdy shit. So if you're a bit of a nerd musician, or like just a bit of a nerd in general about everything, I know myself and Dom are subject matter experts on so many different things, but we're gonna stay in this lane about film composition and scoring and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna rattle off some questions at you, and you can answer them as briefly or as at length as you want. So, what projects you've worked on are you most proud of?
Oh wow. Okay, we're still talking right. Just specifically music composition, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Um, I would say one of my recent things, which was pretty much one of the last ones that I've put out, or that has been publicized, is a film called Size Eight,
Okay.
and it's another short film, but it's basically about the LGBTQ community, and it's kind of like how a kid gets put into, well, his dad is trying to put him into different shoes and stuff like that, and just the whole subject matter of that is so, it's just so recent still.
Yeah.
And I think the director, she did a really good job. Again, another controversial thing was that it's a woman being a director, which is there's not that many out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's only in recent years that we're starting to see, the impact of that, and obviously, like you said, the push of different social political movements that have done, I mean, done wonders. I mean, this is all excellent stuff. This is stuff that we want to see moving forward. But I think you've all got to start somewhere, right? So I think that would fall into that category, no?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I had to listen to that the soundtrack for that. That's on Spotify, by the way, if you want to check it out. It's very like synthetic and soundscapey and things like that. And I know I'm using very broad terms, but it's comparatively to some other stuff that you've made. It's very fitting to the concept, if that makes sense. Because I had no idea what that movie was. Now you tell me, it now makes a ton of sense. And I didn't even see the movie, so it now makes a ton of sense where it fits.
Yeah, it's very funny with those kind of movies. You try to make basically something that not only reminds you, like when you watch the film, you're kind of like, okay, this is what this means. But also when you listen to something later, you
Yeah,
can still kind of like reflect back on, okay, cool. Oh yeah, I remember this, and this brings me into this mood, and this reminds me of this kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. When you are recording, what's your go to when you start to record? Do you pick up instruments first? Do you just go straight to the computer? Like what's where do you start?
I can only say in the great words of Hans Zimmer, the computer is my instrument,
Right.
pretty much, because it's kind of like everything is so digital nowadays, and it has to be like pretty much you touch it and it should be go.
Right.
And the computer a lot of the times enables you to do that sort of stuff. So saying all that, yes, everything goes into a computer, but I still very much play like guitars and basses and like all the acoustic instruments, flutes and pan flutes and all that sort of stuff, and uh, percussiony bits like shakers, different types of drums in general. But everything always ends up in the box, so it's always going into the computer. It's just the way the world works at the moment.
Hmm.
Everything is so digital; it needs to be conformed to something, and then you need to be able to send it. Most of the times, it's still like 99% of the times, everything is digital now.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Um,
So when you are composing, when you pick up those instruments or you go to the computer or whichever one you approach first, like which part of it arrives first? Because obviously you've got the screen, you've got the images, you've got everything pulled up. Let's say you've pulled up the entire session, you've got it all ready to go. What's something that you look for first? Is it a melody? Is it a harmony? Do you like try and isolate like motifs, or do you just kind of just throw your hands on the keyboard and hope for the best?
I pretty much for myself, I can say I work pretty much in kind of like three different ways. So one of them would be more like on the sound spectrum kind of thing. So I see something, it reminds me of the sound. So I'm like, oh, I think this would really kind of like fit underneath, or this could fit on top of something. Um, or this, the other thing is I simply just pick up a guitar or something in which is kind of like a similar instrument that I'm very familiar of, and I just picked it up and I start playing, and whatever comes out comes out. And then the third thing would be kind of like, I'm not really a pianist as such anyways, so I do it for myself and I can play for myself, and I understand obviously harmony and theory and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But I love the fact that I'm not super capable of playing piano.
Sure.
It sounds really funny,
No,
because
I get that. I get
like
that.
a lot of the times when you pick up an instrument that you're so familiar with, you always play the same shapes, the same forms, the same stuff, you know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And with
I
the
couldn't agree
piano,
more.
I sit down, it's just like stuff comes out, and I could never write that on something that I work with every day, like
Yeah.
in and out, you know.
Yeah, I hear that. So if you had to choose a major studio, so say one of the big movie houses or the big studios come to you and say, Dominik Told, we need you. We're going to commission you to do a soundtrack. It's for blah. It's for this. It's for that. What if you had a project that you would kill to work on? What genre would it be? Would it be like action? Would it be a horror movie? Because they're so different when you think about the soundtracks. What would be your ideal scenario?
Ooh, that's hard as well.
Yeah.
I would love to do a proper drama, like a really, really good, well-made drama. And there are not that many out there anymore. It's really funny, but yeah, the like, you know, where the plot is right, the director is right, and then the all of the actors are right as well, because they have to basically put everything on, you know, like if they don't, if they don't deliver the movie, you don't really feel it.
Yeah. I hear that. I
Yeah,
hear
but
that.
a proper, well written drama, well acted, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So I can just imagine, like, in a few years' time, I can be watching this movie, and all of a sudden, and I'm like, I pull up Netflix, I finish the movie, and at the end it says music and arrangement by Dominik Told, right? So that's the dream. That's the end game with that.
Yeah, never stop dreaming.
Yeah. So what are you working on right now? Like, that you obviously that you can talk about, because I know a lot of this is very hush hush until there's things coming out and so on and so forth. But what are you working on, or what projects are you working on right now or in the near future?
There is a one project that I've recently been asked for, and they've actually been working really quickly, which is kind of fascinating, because a lot of the times these things move a lot slower. Like, until they've shot everything and until they've done everything, and until they want music, a lot of the times you're kind of like the last in the chain. But with these guys, they've pretty much, like, I mean, they've been working on the script and on the idea for a long time, probably. But the shot happened in the matter of, like, I think days. They just stuck in like 12-hour sessions a day,
Wow.
and then they just went for it. And yeah, they're now in post production and everything, and it's the very standard chain again. Like, I'm probably going to be last in the chain again, but yeah, it's a movie called Inappropriate.
Okay.
It's another kind of short film,
Yeah.
but it's from a director, again, a woman.
Mm.
Funnily
I'm
enough,
sensing
like,
a theme here, Dom.
yeah, same. I just realized what I said there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but she's a local girl, and she's actually quite young as well. She's like in her mid-20s, has done quite a lot of short films already, has done a few TV series for Germany as well.
Okay.
And yeah, I think she's really, really cool, and she's going to be one of the up and coming artists really from here.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. What was her name again?
Lisa. The surname is a bit funny. Kirschbaumer.
Kirschbaumer. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's one of the most Austrian names I've ever heard. All right. So, kind of in closing, like, I'm just wrap it up, and we finish every jam finishes with what you call the head, right? You go back to the head, you wrap it up, you get done, you get out, you go have a pint. So three really
well,
quick
we can't go out at the moment.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we can't leave the house. We're currently on lockdown right now.
But we can have a pint in the house.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm surprised. We've made it like half an hour into this conversation, and we haven't mentioned coronavirus even once. So
there it is.
Yeah, so there you go. At least there's something to talk about when we're sat at home.
The great times of the virus.
Yeah, we're gonna look back in history when you talk about like the Great Depression or the plagues and things like that. We're gonna look back and we're going to so the great virus of the 20s. So, I was there when. So I'm gonna wrap this up, and we're gonna do three really quick questions. I just want you to give me your first response. You don't have to explain it nor defend it. You just have to say it. Who is an artist or a composer that you would most like to work with?
I think at the moment it would be Junkie XL, a guy called Tom Holkenborg.
Yeah, Junkie XL. That he blended into from like DJ to pop producer to like movie composer.
Well, funny
now.
enough, he was a metal producer.
Yeah,
as well. Like
he's been all over the place.
Basically was he all over the place.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, but crazy guy. Like I think I would love to see his work, like his workflow. How he does things, because he does pretty much everything by himself.
Right.
I mean, there is some orchestration bits and copying stuff, and obviously he has assistants and all that sort of stuff. But he mixes everything himself, and most of it is self-written. And it must be crazy, like to be in his cave, really.
Like I think my first introduction to him was that old Nike football like ad with the
Little Less Conversation.
The Little Less Conversation, the Junkie XL Elvis thing, where he remixed it, put like some soundtrack to it, and beefed it up in a super early 2000s dance way. And I think that obviously gave him a tremendous boost into the public eye, and then he disappeared again and went back into his cave, as you just mentioned, and and started making different music for different things. And he's obviously clearly been successful. So speaking of success, first thing you would do if you were given a $1 million check or a €1 million check.
So what would I do with it?
Mm-hmm. The first thing you would do.
I'll try to make it into 10.
Turn it into 10.
Yeah.
That's
try turn it into 10.
That's like one of those like genie in a lamp questions, like, oh, you have 3 wishes.
Yeah,
I wish for 3 more wishes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, do you know what? Fair enough. I see you. I said you didn't have to defend it, and I won't cry. All right, last question. Dominik Told, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Ooh, the 5-year question. Well, hopefully enjoying life. So that's the first thing.
It's a good start.
And then secondly, hopefully, like I get closer and closer to the dream of actually being like able to fully live as a full working full-time composer for film and TV. That would be great.
Yeah,
I think that'd be amazing.
Well, I hear that. I hope it works out for you, buddy. And obviously, I talk to you frequently enough that I can keep track of that. But thank you for joining.
Mate.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you for having this silly conversation about everything to do with film music. I appreciate you. And I learned the whole time.
Mate. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Like,
of course,
it was so unexpected. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, let's do this. We're gonna start it, and then it's happening.
Yeah, well, that's my resolve. Whenever I commit to something, I fully commit. So you know where I'm at.
Yes, mate.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, bud.
Cheers, man.
And that's it. I hope you all learned something here today, either about the history of film scores and music for movies, or about my good friend Dominik Told. If you made it this far into my podcast, thank you for helping support me in my endeavor to learn more about the mad world of music we live in. Please remember to subscribe and comment on the podcast, and all the relevant and referenced information will be in the description of the episode. It's time to kill this jam and have another one next week. Peace!